Hello and welcome to our conversation today here at Trinity Cathedral. I'm Bishop Peter Eaton and I'm joined by Father Sanford Graf, who is the parish priest of Good Shepherd Church and School in Tequesta. And I'm also joined by Miss Ariana Hilton, who is a member of Holy Family Church in Miami Gardens and one of the best theophers in the Diocese of Southeast Florida. And we're here today to have a conversation together about how it is that we feel the nudge of God in our lives. How is it that God gets our attention? And so I'm going to ask you to tell me just a little bit about your own experience. How is it that you, Ariana, have felt in your life God's little nudge, or God whispering to you, or some way in which God's trying to get your attention?
Well, I'd say it started when I first started going to church. I'm a cradle Episcopalian, which means I've been born into the Episcopal Church, and my grandparents take me to church every day. But I didn't really understand what God was in the beginning ages, of course, but then it started developing throughout the years, and then I'd say throughout my high school years right now, I've truly felt the nudge of God because I've been getting so many opportunities in the church, and it's really great for me. And that's my nudge, is just saying yes to everything and just listening out to the opportunities and thanking God for every chance I get.
So maybe the first nudge was when you were brought to church as a baby for your baptism, a nudge you didn't even remember.
Nope.
But yet it started this whole pattern of reflection and experience as you grew up in the church, of being in God's way, so that you could feel God sort of, as it were, nudging you into the next thing.
Yeah.
That's great. What about you, Father?
I commend you for saying yes. I say no most of the time, and for quite a while, until I can actually get my head and my heart and my soul around what's happening. So maybe I'm a slow learner. I don't know if that's what it is, but for me, God's nudge is always there before I even realize it. You know, that the presence of the Holy Spirit, that body of Christ through which these things tend to happen, the church, as you've mentioned, are ways that God, I think, tries to get my attention. And I used to think that was always going to come through an intellectual kind of thing. So through my mind, I would understand what I was getting myself into before I said yes. And what I actually found was that it was other people who ended up being the conduit or the channel for God to speak and to call and to nudge, so to speak. So even my priesthood was the result of course, a bishop. But it was actually the result of students your age, many, many years ago, who treated me like a clergy person in certain ways, pastorally, in terms of confiding and talking about things, their life and whatnot. And it wasn't until a spiritual director said, well, they're treating you like you're their priest, like you're their pastor. And so now we just need to kind of figure out what to do with that and get the bishop involved. And it wasn't you as my bishop, but it was not so much an intellectual or a thing of the mind. It was really a thing that happened in community and a thing that happened in relationship for me.
Right. So this is really very good and helpful. And we're talking particularly about our life in the church. So you're talking about what it means to be raised in a church family, and how that means that there are all kinds of opportunities and constant nudges, as it were, because you're always involved in something. And you're talking about the nudges that you felt in the course of your own life in the church. What about for those people who are maybe watching this and who are not at the moment or yet in a church community? How do we talk and help and open up what it might mean to feel the nudge of God outside our church communities, outside the very good resources that we all have and know that help us mature in the faith? So what might a nudge of God feel like to someone who's never been in a church or whose church attendance or relationship may be a little vague? Any ideas?
I'd say that it can be seen in different voices. Many people say that God speaks through people to you because sometimes you don't get the dream like Joseph did how many millions of years ago, you know?
Right.
And like he speaks through you, not through dreams, but through the people that you speak with.
Right.
And then that's where you hear those opportunities, and that's where you hear what God is trying to get you to do. And it's like repetitive. You hear the same thing over and over again, and you're like, what is that? You know what I'm saying? Why do I keep hearing this certain thing? Maybe I should look into it. Maybe I should continue and dive into whatever this recurrence is happening, you know? And that's what it should feel like. And that's what it felt like for me, you know?
So it might be that someone is having experiences of conversations with friends. It might be that someone's having an experience perhaps of beauty, of the beauty of nature, or the beauty of art, or the beauty of music. The performing arts have always been a great revealer, and a great place where the nudges of God can occur. So those are places that you would say those outside the church might pay some attention. So that when they are experiencing those things, particularly if they're a thing, I like what you say about the fact that people will have to be nudged more than once, and that here we have something that people need to pay attention to. So that I think that's good. What about you? Reflections?
I agree with everything Ariana has said, and I would add that God is always moving, right? So the Spirit of God is always with people everywhere in all times, and always trying to move in a way that connects us more deeply with God and with one another toward the end of building, our churchy language would be God's kingdom, right? But a kingdom of justice and peace and mercy and love. I think the challenge for humans as a whole is that we are a distracted people. We get ourselves really focused on just stuff that sometimes either doesn't matter all that much, or we get ourselves twisted up around things that are baked in fear or scarcity, things that are kind of self-serving. And so the challenge is how do we notice God's movement that's already been there? And that's my story too, right? But for those who are not necessarily accustomed to the church, they do look into nature. Going to the beach here in southeast Florida for sunrise, but beauty, art, all of those things. I think the other place that people become much more aware of God's presence, God's nudge, God's provision is during crisis.
Of course.
And that's why, and now I'm going to get a little preachy if you don't mind, Bishop, but that's why the church has to be there in crisis. During really difficult times, the church needs to be with those who are disenfranchised and oppressed, those who are poor and on the margins, because those are the people who are paying the best attention often to God's movement. And that's why the church as a whole, the people of God, need to show up and be there, not necessarily to always help, although that's one of the things we're called to do, but to bear witness to people having this incredible encounter with the Holy Spirit.
Right. I think, too, and I want to build on what you've just said, and that is that God shows up in times of crisis for us in our individual lives too. So when we're sick, when someone has died, at a funeral, if you think of a marriage as a crisis, sometimes people.
You've been married longer than I have, so I don't know what you're talking
but you know
about.
what I mean. A crisis is not a pejorative term. A crisis is an important moment. So even some wedding services can be for people who are not ordinarily churchgoers, moments in which they feel the nudge of God and can respond. And I always like to say myself, particularly at Christmas and Easter, when there are always people in our churches who are there for reasons that they may not quite understand, because they're not regular churchgoers, but it's Christmas or it's Easter and they think they should be in church. That's a kind of a nudge of God too. And what we want to know is that when they're there, that nudge of God may be fed a bit, so that they recognize that not that there is a life in the church, first and foremost, but that there is a life in God that is there for them and open for them and ready for them, which the church is meant to nurture. But I don't know. You've seen a lot in your in your life, particularly as you've helped in church, and I imagine you've participated in a lot of these sorts of services, funerals and weddings and things like that. What is your understanding or feeling about how these are doorways for people who may not be connected as deeply to God as they might be, but who might find a way in?
I feel they can find a way in at like just having a friend who goes to church and inviting them to the church events and having them come and experience it for the first time, and then that can be their nudge. Because me personally, when I go on retreats, I really love retreats because I love bringing in outsiders who finally get to see what God can do, especially with young people like us, because there's so many people that don't necessarily go to church every Sunday, and then when they take the chance to learn and see what God does, then that's when you can hear that nudge and they get closer and they get more interested in like just seeing the joy in all of their faces. You know, a moment I had with this particularly was when I was leading a happening retreat, and I was the rector for this one, and it was just a whole other experience. It was so fun being the rector, particularly when we were doing a prayer service, and we were going through different prayer stations, and then it was my task to wash their feet, just like on Holy Thursday for Lent. And as I'm washing their feet and praying and reading the scripture, and like I just felt God, and then that brought us all closer. And then I had to go and pray over it, everyone who wished to have a prayer. And I was like, before I was like panicking, I was like, I don't know how to pray good. Like, how do you pray good? And then kids started walking up that you wouldn't even expect. These were the shy kids, the new ones that never been here before. And they came up to me and they were like, can you pray for me? And I was like, what would you like to be prayed for? And then like they said so and so. And so it just clicked and it came to me. And I was like, wow, I am aiding in the nudge of God in this moment.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think what you're describing is exactly what the bishop you just described. I said crisis, and then what you said was it's not just that, but it's also moments of change, right? It's in these moments of change. And so I love retreats. We just took our youth group on retreat to St. Columba in Marathon, stopping actually here last week, a week ago, to take a tour. And for me, the big word I use is displacement, right? It's when you're taken out of your, or willingly leave your context, your home, your church, your familiar routes, and you go to somewhere new. And in your case, it was as the rector, right, of happening. And so it shifts you enough that things are kind of new. And I think it opens us up so that we're more aware of how God's presence, that nudge, is there for us, especially when, in your case, you were being called upon to serve someone else, right? And I think that's such an important piece of this, that being with God is not just about kind of, quietly worshiping him in a particular way, but rather that God is always calling us to serve each other. And in that service, that nudge is able to find kind of a crack or a conduit through our normal routines to meet us, which is so cool. And I'm glad that you experienced that.
Look, I want to drill down a little bit more into this idea of what the nudge of God really might be, because again, it's a nice phrase. We've identified some ways in which we might feel it, but I think we could do well to expand it again a little bit more and see where else might. First of all, where else have you felt the nudge of God, perhaps outside the church or in other kinds of communities, and how might, because not everything that happens to us, not every insight that we have, not every idea that we have is actually the nudge of God. Right. So there has to be some discernment and some thoughtfulness about this. Right. Otherwise, we could blame God for everything that happens in our life, and that's not going to work. So how do we expand this? What's the language of the nudge of God that we want to kind of develop? Any ideas? I think
we have some options, right? You've got presence of God, which is a very broad, I'm arguing somewhat universal phenomenon or reality.
Right.
So nudge seems to be a part of that, but not that, right? So we're not mistaking presence, that God is with us in this moment, for necessarily being nudged. But we also don't want to mistake indigestion for the nudge of God, right? We haven't had lunch yet, so
That's
you'll have
absolutely
to,
right.
you'll have to join us for afterwards to see if that happens. But I think and then on the other extreme, and this is your territory as a bishop of the church, we have the call of God.
Right.
And that's quite, I think that's quite different. That's a very particular type of God's nudge that's quite amplified, and I think also has implications that are lifelong for many of us.
Sure. I want to have Ariana say something about where we might see the nudge of God more broadly, but I want to come back to the question of the difference between the nudge and the call, because I think it's an important distinction. So say when you're at school, when you're out and about doing non-churchy things, where do you see the possibility of God's nudge for people?
I see it when I do my theater class and my club.
Tell us a bit more about that. I mean, I'm interested in that. I think that's great.
Yeah, so I started drama at my school when I was a freshman, and then I kind of went up and up each year to the point where I'm currently the president now. And it's been a community, and you really don't get that type of community outside when I'm at church, because we have our youth group, and then we only see every Sunday, and that's it. We have a family, but only on Sundays.
Right.
When in drama, we have a family every single day of the week, because we have rehearsals and we stay late until like even 9 o'clock, and we don't get home until like 10. And so just because of all the time, all the months we spent preparing for a show or showcase or like even competition, we just start building that further community, and we become a real family, and we just understand each other, and like it's only God that can help you with those relationships. Yes, sometimes something may occur, but He helps us to get through it. And it's that family environment that we can get inside of school. Depending on any club you want to join, anything at our school that we do, you can find a sense of community and also feel the friendship and the love that God taught us throughout the years.
I think that's absolutely right, because the nudge of God does not come from nowhere, right? There is this feeling that if we just wait around long enough, the heavens will open and God will make an announcement, or God will give us a little push. But in fact, if we reflect on our experiences of what the nudge of God is like, that sort of little push, it comes within the context of some kind of community. Whether it's a school community or a work environment. Kate, my wife, had the nudge of God because a co-worker actually gave her a small New Testament. And it was probably naughty to do, but this was so long ago that nobody can be prosecuted for peddling religion in the workplace. But that one moment in a workplace opened up a whole new relationship with God for Kate, and that was a particularly religious act in the giving of a copy of the New Testament to Kate. But nonetheless, it came in an unexpected time from an unexpected person in an unexpected place, and I love your reflection of the fact that the community of people in the drama club is a place where it is possible for us to get a glimpse of God, get a feel for who God is, because of the work you're doing together, the time you spend with each other, and the ways you're able to talk to each other and help each other with the things you have to do.
So Bishop, I'm curious about our, as we're working toward a definition, right? We're probably we're trying to round about. How would you distinguish between the nudge of God and something like divine inspiration? Do you see those? I see them as a little different, but I was.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I like the phrase "the nudge of God" is that there's a sense in which it isn't going to have a definition.
Right.
I mean, we know what a nudge is like. We're standing next to a friend and we get a little, we get, I mean, and it comes out of nowhere, and we're nudged for various reasons. We're nudged to get out of the way. We're nudged to hurry up. We're nudged to pay attention. We're nudged to shut up. We're nudged to do all kinds of things. That little nudge of the elbow can be a whole manner of thing. So I think the business of a nudge, the difference between a nudge and divine inspiration, is that like call, I think the nudge is the invitation to the deeper experience of the presence of God or of the call of God that can't happen unless God gets our attention with a little nudge.
That it's a bit different from inspiration in that it's actually, well, you didn't say this, but my impression was that it's more directional. Inspiration feels more kind of universal in terms of its lifting up, but nudge is kind of we're trying to get you moving in a direction.
Yeah, and I think a nudge is not something you actually may understand at the beginning.
Right.
In order for there to be inspiration, you have to be open to God and ready for that. I mean, the inspiration is something you have to be open to.
So nudge comes before inspiration.
Nudge comes before inspiration,
okay.
I think.
Okay.
I think.
I like
because
it's a working definition.
Well, because then nudge pushes you into the space where possibilities open, and that's where inspiration comes.
Would you include? I'm sorry to use such churchy jargon, and if you're watching and you're not a churchy person, I'm just using churchy jargon. Nudge versus conviction.
Again, I don't think you can have conviction before you have the nudge.
So the nudge is really the first.
I think the nudge
like
is
one of the first
things.
encounters that.
I think so.
That
at least,
God,
at least that's my impression.
Yeah. I like that.
And because again, conviction. I mean, that doesn't say that. This is not to say, I think, that after one has grown into the life of a community of faith and developed patterns of prayer and all that kind of thing, that nudges cease.
Right.
When other things may become more important, like inspiration or call or things like that. But conviction. Yeah. Because one hopes that the nudges come all the time because there's a long tradition in Christian spirituality of the kind of subtleness of God, of the fact that God is not going to beat us over the head with a 2x4 to get our attention. God is so a nudge, I think, is partly an invitation, partly a little push. But I think I do think it is for most people the gateway to a deeper understanding, a deeper reality, whether they come into a church or not. And we hear lots of stories about people who at some moment or another felt some kind of nudge, had some sort of small and apparently insignificant experience that all of a sudden opened up a whole new reality for them. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are about this, Ariana, but it seems to me that may be one way of thinking about it. But it's not the point is, it's not a linear issue.
Right.
We don't start in one place and we don't start with a nudge and end up as a saint. We start with a nudge, and we're going to keep needing those nudges all the way along. And perhaps even more particularly, if we become rather too not complacent, but rather too settled in our practice and living out of our faith, we may get a little inattentive, and there'll be some more nudges.
I have a question for you as well, because I think what the bishop you're describing is that, and for me, the nudges have felt very personal. Like God knows Sanford, like God knows me, and God is kind of nudging me in a particular way. And so I want to see if that rings true for you as well. And also, have you ever prayed that God would nudge you in a way that maybe you didn't feel like you had?
Yeah, especially since I'm a senior, I'm applying to all of these colleges. In the beginning,
you've got big changes coming up.
Yes, very big change. In the beginning, I didn't know what I wanted to major because you know, your parents are like, oh, what do you want to do? Well, I can do everything, but
Right.
I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'd be happy with. I don't know what my dream is. I don't really have a dream. I'm just going by and seeing
Right.
what I can do and pick things up here. Like, I'm good at writing, but I like psychology. But then again, I do theater. So it's like, where do I do that? And yes, there is a happy medium because all of those things can be connected. But it's also just really stressful because now you have to narrow it down to one thing, because when you apply you can only choose one
Right.
major
Mhm.
unless you decide to double major, but that's another story, you know. And so I just find myself at nights just really frustrated over like college applications, and then like what should I do next, and then balancing school over that. And I find myself praying at night to God, like, God, just give me a sign and tell me, what am I good at? What are you going to tell me to do? Whatever you want to do, use me as your vessel. I will be happy with whatever you want. Because also a point in my life, I wanted to become a priest. It's still in my how do you say? It's like,
You're still thinking
yeah,
about
I'm
this
still
and
thinking about
still
it.
wrestling with this.
Yeah, and like I've spoken with so many people, and everybody says, yeah, you should do that too. So how do you narrow it down when people say, yes, you're good at this, yes, you're good at that, yes, you're good at this? So I pray to God and I ask him, nudge me in the way
Yes.
that will lead me to what you're doing. So right now I'm satisfied with
Yeah.
psychology,
Right.
and we'll see how that goes. But that's probably the most relatable thing for me and other kids my age, because every single class we're always talking about, oh my gosh, the applications are coming out now. Oh my gosh, oh, I'm sure I didn't get in. Oh, I got in, yay. And like, it's just a whole bunch of emotions and a whole bunch of things. So it's really just trying to find and narrow everything down to where that nudge of God is, and not losing hope, because through all of this, we're like, oh, what happens now? And like, you're on a like spiritual high, right? And you keep going, and it's like a story. There's a rising and falling action, there's an exposition, everything. So what happens in the falling action? You stop, but to get back up again, you need to get pushed. So that's the nudge, pushing you back up again into that rising action. So it's just a journey where you continue going up and down and up and down, and each time you need a little push to get you back up there.
I think that's brilliant,
that.
because I think that reminds us that our spiritual lives, our lives in God, are not one progression of wonderful experience after wonderful experience after wonderful experience. Just as none of our relationships are. Our friendships are not like that. Our marriages are not like that.
Well, speak for yourself on that one. You never know who's watching.
Our marriages are not like that. Our friendships are not like that. Our relationships with our work is not like that. No production of a show goes smoothly from beginning to end. So in all of our relationships, whether they're with the things that we do professionally or work or personally, whether they're things that we do, nothing goes smoothly from one thing to another. There are always seasons in our relationships, and there are seasons in our relationships with God. And sometimes we need that nudge to move along. But actually, sometimes we may need to give God a little nudge too, to say, don't forget, we're in this together. It's not just you nudging me. Sometimes I need to get your attention as well, which is what you're saying in your prayers. You're saying, please, God, give me some help in trying to find the next thing. But you also said something that was also, I think, crucially important, is that you don't give up hope. Hope is that conviction. It's not a feeling, remember. It's not a feeling. Hope is that conviction that gets us through those times when we're either not feeling God's presence or not certain of the next thing to do, but we have the conviction that God has not abandoned us. And if we continue to pay attention, and we know God is paying attention to us, at some point our attentions are going to meet and something is going to happen that reassures us and helps deepen our conviction that we're on the right path, or that we have to make a change, So I think that where we're going here, I think, is a conversation into what do we do after we feel those nudges? How do we take those nudges and make them into a kind of a more coherent and deeper relationship with God and relationship with our fellow human beings? And that'll be the subject of our next conversation as we take this on a little further and say, how do we put these nudges into practice?
Love it.
So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And we look forward to our next conversation. Thank you for joining us here at Trinity Cathedral in Miami, and we look forward to seeing you again when you join us for our next podcast, when I'll be with Father Sanford and with Ariana as we talk further about how we deepen our relationship with God.